In the midnight glow where the stars align, we lose ourselves in the rhythm divine. Underneath the sky painted with dreams, we're chasing the echoes of silent screams. Caught in the spell of the cosmic night, where fantasies bloom in the pale moonlight. We'll let go of all that we know and dance in the stardust's gentle flow.
This is Logan's Voice, a podcast about the lives touched by addiction, the crisis fueled by illicit fentanyl, and the people left behind. I'm Doug Ballinger, Logan's dad, and I created this space in honor of my son and for everyone who's ever loved someone suffering from substance use disorder. Here we speak the truth about loss, stigma, and survival. We grieve out loud. We learn. We fight for change. Because silence doesn't save lives, but our voices just might. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not remain silent. Hi, I'm Doug Ballinger, Logan's dad, and I want to thank you for being here. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a celebrity or a polished media personality. I'm a parent, a grieving dad, a voice that can't stay silent anymore. You see, I never set out to create a podcast. I'm not even sure I fully know what I'm doing now. I'm learning as I go. But I know this, my son Logan is gone, and I refuse to let that be the end of his story. So who am I now? I'm a dad who has spent sleepless nights wondering what I missed, replaying conversations, rewriting history in my head. I'm someone who has sat in silence, crying in the dark, hoping for some kind of sign, anything to let me know that Logan was still out there in some way. I'm someone who knows what it feels like to be judged, to feel isolated, to carry a grief so big it doesn't fit into small talk. I'm someone who has seen people metaphorically cross the street to avoid the discomfort of saying, I'm sorry for your loss. And I know that I'm not alone. You're listening to this because you've been touched by this crisis too. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you're terrified you're going to lose someone. Maybe you're trying to understand what this epidemic really looks like. So this podcast is my way of reaching out, of saying, I see you, of saying Logan's name out loud, and creating a space where we can say your loved one's name too, because they mattered, and so do we. Let me tell you about Logan. Not the headlines, not the toxicology report, the real Logan. Logan was light. He had this mischievous, infectious smile, the kind that made you smile even when you were mad. He had a dry, sharp wit. He could deliver a joke with perfect timing, and he'd often catch you off guard with his cleverness. From a young age, he was curious. He loved to take things apart, not always putting them back together, mind you, but he wanted to know how everything worked. That same curiosity made him a great conversationalist. He could talk to anyone, old, young, didn't matter. He had a special relationship with his grandparents, my parents. He'd go to Memphis to spend time with them, especially Granddaddy. They'd go to the lake and fish, ride motorcycles. One year, Logan went with him to Daytona for Bike Week, and it was one of the best memories they shared. Logan became Granddaddy's shadow that week. He was in his element, surrounded by chrome and engines and people who lived life out loud. He also had a really thoughtful side. He'd go shopping with his gran and could spend hours hunting for little treasures. He loved Depression-era glass, and any time he found a teapot, he'd light up because that meant he had something special to give his mom. He wasn't perfect. He was impulsive, stubborn, fiercely independent, but he loved hard. He felt deeply. He saw things in people that others missed, and he was mine. Let me tell you a little about the struggles that Logan faced. Early in life, he was diagnosed with ADHD. Like so many other parents, we were told that medication was the answer. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. But what it did for sure was start a pattern. One that said, if something's wrong inside, there's a pill for that. As he got older, that belief deepened. Life was overwhelming. School didn't come easily. He bounced between places, between friendships, between states of mind. And like so many teenagers, he found people who understood the chaos, other kids who were struggling too. Experimentation followed. Pills, pot, drinking, nothing seemed to hold him for long. He could be doing great one month and completely off the rails the next. And the truth is, I didn't always know. He was good at hiding it, at telling just enough truth to keep me from seeing the full picture. We tried tough love. We tried understanding. He moved in with his uncle. He came back. He left again. We tried structure. We tried grace. And all through it, he kept slipping. There was a time I thought we had turned a corner. He seemed more focused. He had a great job. He was talking about the future, and he wanted to get better. But illicit fentanyl doesn't care about hope. On that day that changed everything in May of 2020, I remember the moment I got the phone call. The phone call came from my father. He asked what we were doing, and I told him we'd been working on our camper, getting ready for a big trip that we were supposed to leave on the next day. And he said he needed to talk to me about Logan. And for some reason, I knew that he was dead. My whole body went cold. It's a sound, a weight that never really leaves you. I can still hear the silence that followed. I remember exactly where I was, what I was wearing, what the air smelled like. I remember fumbling for words, trying to understand what I was hearing, but nothing made sense to me. When you lose a child, your mind fractures in places you didn't know existed. Everything slows down, then speeds up, then crashes down again. I remember screaming, then silence, and then screaming again. My world just stopped. Logan didn't overdose in the way most people think. He didn't slowly spiral down. He wasn't using for days on end, disappearing into some abandoned building. It was a single moment, a single illicit fentanyl laced dose, one bad choice on one hard night. He thought he was taking something else, something that might take the edge off or help him sleep. We don't know for sure. What we do know is that that fatal dose was laced with fentanyl and xylazine, and that in tiny amounts, just grains, was enough to end his life. There was no second chances. There was no time for intervention and no time for recovery. One fatal dose. That's all it took. He died alone. I wasn't there to hold his hand. I wasn't there to fight for him. I wasn't there to say, I love you, we'll figure this out. And I carry that guilt. Every day I carry the weight of not being able to save him. Every morning I wake up and remember he's gone. Every night I close my eyes and hope to dream about him, to hear his laugh one more time. When a parent loses a child, especially to something like fentanyl poisoning, the grief is complicated. It comes with questions, with blame, often directed inward, and with a society that doesn't always know how to hold us in that pain. So we're left to carry it, quietly, alone. But I don't do that anymore. That's why this podcast exists. I created Logan's Voice because I needed to speak, because the silence after Logan's death wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. It rang in my ears, filled the rooms in my house, settled into my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. And I realized something important. Silence is a big part of the problem. We live in a society that still doesn't understand addiction. We reduce it to bad choices and weak character. We use words like junkie, addict, burnout, as if that's all the person is, as if their story ended the moment they used. But people are more than their addiction. Logan was, your person was. They had dreams, families, passions, talents. And when we fail to recognize that, when we reduce them to their struggle, we deny them their humanity. This podcast is a response to that. It's a refusal to let the narrative stop at the lowest point. It's a place where the full story can be told. Not just the tragedy, but the truth, the love, the laughter, the pain, the potential. I created this podcast for parents just like me, for siblings, for friends, for anyone who has sat in a dark room and whispered, I miss you. For anyone who's angry, for anyone who feels like no one understands what this loss really feels like. And importantly, I created it for those that are still here, for the ones still struggling with substance use disorder, the ones walking that razor thin line between recovery and relapse. I want them to hear these stories and know that they matter. They're not lost yet. There's still time. There's still hope. Logan's story isn't just about how he died, it's about how he lived. It's about how he loved. And now it's about his voice. And it will live on through me, through this, so that someone else's story might end differently. We can't change the past, but we can change the way we talk about it, the way we support one another, the way we show up in the face of crisis. And it starts here. So, what's ahead? Where do we go from here? In upcoming episodes, I'm going to take you deeper into Logan's story. Not just the timeline of events, but the heart of who he was and how the world responded to him. We'll talk about the signs we missed, the systems that failed us, and the moments that still replay in my mind. I'll be inviting other parents on, people who've lost their children to fentanyl poisoning or heroin or prescription opioids. We'll talk about grief, guilt, resilience, and what it means to rebuild when the foundation of your whole world has collapsed. You'll hear from people in recovery, folks who've been to the edge and found their way back. Their stories are raw and honest, and above all else, necessary. They show us that recovery isn't a straight line, that relapse isn't failure, and that every single life is worth fighting for. We'll also hear from some harm reduction advocates, crisis counselors, and public health professionals. The people working on the front lines, trying to save lives and change policies in a system that often feels too slow to care. This podcast isn't going to sugarcoat anything. It's going to be real. There will be hard truths, but there will also be light. There will be healing. There will be connection. And most importantly, there will be stories. Stories that deserve to be heard. If you're still here, I hope you'll walk this journey with me. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, for listening to my stories, and for bearing witness to Logan's story, to our story. This podcast is my heart laid bare. It's not easy to talk about this, but I believe it's absolutely necessary. Because every time we speak up, we push back against the silence and stigma. Every time we say their names, we remind the world that they mattered. If you've lost someone, say their name today. Say it out loud. Write it down. Keep it alive. If someone you love is still here and still struggling, don't give up. Help them find help. Love them loudly and keep learning. Soon we're going to talk about stigma, how it creeps into our thoughts, our systems, and our silence, and how we start dismantling it. Please subscribe, share, and leave a review if this episode spoke to you, and reach out. I want to hear your stories too. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not remain
In
silent.
this cosmic gate, as we twirl in the magic of the cosmic light.